Hi there, this is Justin Krane, Certified Financial Planner Professional and founder of Krane Financial Solutions. Welcome to Money You Got This. So how can you really live? How? By uniting your business money, your personal money with your life and your business. Word up.
Krane Financial is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only, and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products.
Hey everyone, welcome to Money You Got This. This show is brought to you by Krane Financial Solutions. I'm Justin Krane. I'm a certified financial planner professional, and I offer investment management services and do financial planning primarily for business owners. I'm also the author of the book, Money You Got This. I'm psyched you're listening to the show. I want to give you this free report, 3 things multimillionaires do to grow their wealth. Just go to coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. That's coolmoneyshow.com to grab it. Thanks. Today, we've got a special guest. His name is Michael F. Schein. Do I have a bio for him? No. Is he a smart guy? Yes. Is he a stud with marketing and strategy and building and becoming an influencer and creating a following? Yes. Was that the one-off bio? Yes. But Michael, welcome to the show and tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Justin. It is great to be here. So I was born in either 1432 or 1433, this illegitimate son of a count and a courtesan. I was bitten on the neck by a vampire. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, you said for me to tell my bio, so I could be anything. You know, it's awesome. No, I'm an author and I'm a business owner. I own a marketing agency called Microfame Media. We work with consultants and other idea-based businesses. And we help, as we say, we turn consultants into celebrities, into micro celebrities. So we'll find a niche that if they stood out in that niche, it would really be very, very good for business. We'll come up with a really unique point of view that puts across what they do, maybe a little bit better than they're doing already. And then we'll just sort of blitz the heck out of that niche so that it looks like they're everywhere at once. And usually that results in a lot of new business. But, you know, I started as a writer and always wanted to be a writer. I kind of got into business to originally market my writing and then fell in love with the agency world. But now I've come full circle. I just wrote a book called The Hype Handbook. I shouldn't say I just wrote it. I'm just putting out a book. It's been being written for a long time. But it's called The Hype Handbook, and you know it's coming out with McGraw-Hill, and it's really exciting.
So. That's awesome. All right, so you're very humble. I like that because you got a lot behind, a lot of experience behind you, and I want to ask you about that.
Yeah, I figured you needed something to talk about on the podcast. You know, I don't want to just talk about myself the whole time.
So I see people trying to do this, and I see them failing. And I want to get your opinion on this.
Sure.
Yes, people are consultants. They want to get themselves out there more. They're excited about the lure of turning into kind of like a celebrity-ish like person and getting some recognition. They try it for about 4 days and then they're done.
Yeah.
And they don't really get any traction and they give up.
That's true.
And I believe that it's a long game and you don't just get rich overnight, just like with investing or money or whatever, that it's a long-term thing. So when you're talking to people about becoming more of like a celebrity with hype and creating a following, how do you keep people engaged and make sure that they're seeing it through so they can actually succeed?
I really like this question. I have never been asked this question. And it's a great question because I deal with it a lot and it's a challenge. I mean, I can't tell you that it's not a challenge. In fact, I would say that that's one of the hardest things about running an agency, you know, versus, I mean, there are programs out there where it's kind of a different path to the same thing. So like if you go to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something, the Dale Carnegie Institute or Strategic Coach or whatever, Franklin Covey, their model is that they have really, really good intellectual, property, really good content. You pay, a decent amount of money and you go to a workshop and you learn the material and then you're given tools. And sometimes you customize those tools, but then it's up to you to implement that stuff. And in some ways, there's more reward in that because it's like up to the imagination. It's up to the client to put the stuff into place. Whereas ironically, when you're the delivery mechanism, when you're responsible for delivering the results, because it is a long-term process, you got to constantly be massaging that conversation. So I'm constantly having conversations with clients where, we'll make a lot of good things happen for them, but it doesn't immediately turn into dollars. And some clients get that right away. Some clients ask what's going on. They don't know why it's not turning into dollars. But fortunately, our process, I think, turns into dollars maybe quicker than some of our competitors. And then I'm sure we have some competitors who are, who have, are very quick in that way. But yeah, it's a conversation that always has to take place. Fortunately, we have successful conversations, and we've had a lot of clients for a really long time. But even for the clients that I've worked with for years, I remember having those conversations in the beginning. So,
but as an agency, you're doing some, or a lot, I guess, done for you services to get your clients out there more.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a big difference between getting results that are really, I guess, think of it as a spectrum, right? So on one side of this spectrum, you have traditional PR companies, which are very valuable, very, very valuable. However, the promise of traditional PR companies, most traditional PR companies, is we're going to get you in the media. And there's absolutely no real promise or connection between what getting you in the media will do in terms of your business results. So in some cases, getting in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal is career changing. It does, it changes the world. And then sometimes you just get in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. But most traditional PR companies aren't promising one way or the other. Then on the other side, you have very transactional marketing companies. So pay-per-click, pay-per-click search engine stuff. Now, that has a lot of benefits too, because you know that if you're paying X dollars a lead, and then X percent of those leads convert, you know what your cost per acquisition is. And that's a very, very valuable service. The problem is, let's say you're a business to business consulting company that charges $100,000 per year for your service. Will a $5 lead, a $20 lead, a $100 lead convert? No, I mean, some of these sales processes are a year long. That's a very considered sale. So I think where we sit is kind of the middle. We always start off with the business goals, and we start off with benchmarks. We start off with timelines. So if I know that a client really needs in 4 months to get some kind of financial result, and I can't deliver that for them, I'll tell them. But more often I'll figure out, okay, here's the plan. Let's, blitz this a little bit harder. Let's use this kind of media. So we always start with the business result. At the same time, it's still media. It's still getting exposure. It's not like a direct lead generation kind of thing. Leads result, but it is a little bit in between PR and the more, real transactional marketing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I want to go back though to the people that are going to read your book, because they're going to read these 12 ways that they could create more hype, more awareness, gain followers, and all of that. And they're going to want to do it. And maybe I'm just negative, or maybe I'm just real, is like, how many of them will really follow through and see it all the way and get those results that they can by implementing, as you say, or executing? Why does the brain stop in the 4th inning? And what can we get people to do to go forward, farther out?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think, I mean, I don't think I think things are hard, I mean, in other words, there are no magic formulas. I mean, for example, I'm studying a martial art now. And in my first 3 months, I practiced every day. The last 3 weeks, I got really busy and didn't practice as much. And I feel bad about it. Now I have a fork in the road. I have a decision to make. I can say, I bummed out, or I could just kind of keep going and know that there's ups and downs. So I guess it depends. How motivated are you? Where are you at in your life? How badly do you need it? I mean, if you're coasting in your business and you're making a decent living and it's a nice to have, I don't know. First of all, we should talk about what you're going to learn in a book like mine. But I mean, because it's not for everybody. But I don't know. I think it depends on a lot of things. I mean, I think there have been times in my life where I've worked like a dog, and there have been times in my life where I've slacked off because my motivation was off. I graduated high school and I was a real neurotic in a way. I was a student. Like, I really needed to get into a top college. I don't know what my motivation was. My parents did not put pressure on me. I just was obsessed with this, and I did. And I worked like a dog, and I put myself through the mill. I don't know why. And I was like really driven. And then I got there. I went to University of Pennsylvania, and I was like, okay, what now? Like,
Yeah.
and I did fine, but I didn't work that hard. And now I work really hard again. I mean, so it's just, what's your motivation,
So how do you take someone who is motivated and is going to see it all the way through? They're just a consultant, and they're kind of like, all right, I want to move into that expert status, and then I want to elevate again to be a thought leader. Like, is there a path in doing it, or does it just evolve over time?
Well, yeah, there's certainly a path. I mean, everything is structured. I mean, it's funny, the stuff. So there's two parts to it. There's the structured process that gets you there, and that's a more operational kind of thing, setting goals, setting benchmarks, etc., doing a very rigorous experimentation process. But if you have all that and you don't have the right strategies, the right psychological strategies, the right crowd, strategies to get crowds all worked up and get them to buy, then none of it matters. And that's the hype stuff. So basically what happened was, I never wanted to, I don't know how you started in business. You seem like you've always been business oriented. I did not. I hated business. I did not want to be involved in business at all. Like, my dad like insisted that I took accounting and finance because I wanted to be an English major, and I took them because they were paying for my college. And I don't think it was like learning Greek to me. Since then, I've learned accounting because I'm like tracking my own money. You know what I mean? So I hated it. And so what happened was, one thing led to another. I finally left a corporate job that I had fallen into, and I wanted to be a freelance writer. And I was sure, because I was a good writer, that people would buy my writing, and they didn't. And so I started to figure out, okay, how do I market myself? I didn't even know the word. I mean, how do I get people to buy from me? So I started looking at like sales books and marketing books, and I still didn't make any money. So then I thought back to like, well, who are the best marketers? Like this thing called marketing. Are they really marketers? Well, I don't know. I mean, the old rock managers were pretty good when they used to, like when Alice Cooper would have a billboard in the middle of Piccadilly Circus on the back of a truck with a boa constrictor over his nether regions and nothing else. Cult leaders are pretty good. Government propagandists are good, right? We've seen a lot of that lately. So what if I could learn from them, but apply it ethically? And so that I started messing around and experimenting and looking at very unconventional sources, and it worked, So before long, I had done it for myself. I turned myself into sort of this authority figure. And again, it's not about fame. It's about fame in a certain area. So I got a reputation in a certain niche. And then after a while, people wanted the marketing more than the writing, because it was business writing. And ultimately, people want more clients and want more exposure. So that's how, and now I love business, but only my kind of business. I wouldn't go into sheet metal manufacturing or finance or whatever. But yeah.
You got to make it engaging. So let's talk about
Yeah.
that. So you've got this book that's coming out that's talking about hype. And talk to me about like all of these recent events that have happened, both with the election and coronavirus and just drama. And how do you take hype and then spin it in a way that you would call it ethically or the right way to grow and to gain a following? How do you do that?
Yeah. So my hypothesis.
No pun intended.
Which one? I might have missed them. Hypothesis. Yeah. You know what I learned in writing this book to be very scattered? Hype comes from hyperbole, like exaggeration. I never knew that. Yeah. So I think if I've learned anything through this process, I have learned that human psychology, especially in groups, is human psychology. You may wish that human beings reacted differently to forces and to stimuli and to these kind of things than they did. You might wish that people were totally rational, but they're not. So I don't think so. If you're going to make people, and my definition of hype is, I've taken the word back. I don't think it's negative. To me, it's how do you get groups of people emotional enough and then direct that emotion to get them to do an action that you want them to do. So why is it that we associate that with bad things? To what I found, it's not that the tactics themselves are bad. It's that people who are sociopaths, narcissists, they take to it more easily because they don't see the world how it ought to be. They're not idealistic at all. They see human beings as pawns. And as a result, they're willing to play these games. They have no emotions in their getting in the way. So, that doesn't mean, and they use them to further bad things. That being said, Martin Luther King, who was certainly not a narcissist or a sociopath, was fantastic at these principles. He used the media spectacularly, the way he used language, pure hype. And we can discuss what that means. But Richard Branson, same thing, Thomas Edison. So while there are more bad guys, quote unquote, who are good at this, it's not all bad guys. And that was my main reason I wrote the book. It was because I saw, with all this stuff that's going on in the political situation, so many nefarious characters, people I consider nefarious, using these strategies to con people, basically. And I see so many people with good businesses and good ideas and good causes who just flail in the wind. They just can't gain any traction. And I see everything that they're so good at what they do, but they just fail to open themselves up to these ideas. So I just wanted to put this stuff in the hands of the good guys, because the bad guys don't need it. I mean, they do it naturally.
Why did the good guys fail at this? What are they doing wrong?
So often, remember, there are many good guys who are good at this. You know what I mean? There are many, but why do they fail?
People that are listening, they're like, oh my God, hype, putting myself out there, emotionally charging a group, getting them to do something that I want. I don't know if I'm good at that. I think I'm just going to do the same thing I've always been doing. I mean, that's literally what people are thinking.
And that's why they fail. So in other words, so I'll give you a concrete example. I have a bunch of writer friends, not like business writer friends, novelists, people who write history books, whatever. And they're really good and they do well, but they'll often say things like, oh, I wrote this book and now I have to promote it. And they don't just say, oh, I don't like doing it. They say, I shouldn't have to do it. Like, I'll literally hear them say things like, I shouldn't have to do this. I should be focusing on writing. And I think that people who have big hearts, or who think of themselves as artists, or who think of themselves as pure in their intentions, it feels distasteful to them to think that they are moving people, that they are framing reality to get people to move in a direction. Or, they're just, these tactics also, they're kind of like chess. They take patience, they take thinking a few moves ahead. And people are, these kinds of people that I'm talking about are don't like doing that. So for example, they did an experiment on people with anti-personality disorder, people like psychopaths and sociopaths, who are either serial killers, but a lot of CEOs are psychopaths, which means they don't have empathy and they see people as chess pieces, basically. And when they get into emotion situations that most of us would consider troubling or emotional, their heart rate doesn't go up. So in other words, they don't let emotions get in the way. They just like see interpersonal relations as a chessboard. So it becomes easier for them to do.
And
what do you mean? I mean, as a result, the good guys don't do it as much, I mean, they go to do it and they get all frazzled. They play mind games with themselves. They don't think they ought to do it.
So how do we get people to see that they can do it? There's possibility and it can be rewarding.
So okay. So I see where you're going with that. So I think there's maybe three things. So the first thing is just building the case for it and showing enough examples of people who have used this for good aims, but beyond that, to me, hype can be very playful, right? So I don't know, look at David Bowie or look at
Mhm.
Pussy Riot. That's a good example. That's closer to our time. These are people who have basically used every hype trick in the book to take on the Russian government. So for example, they didn't have access to the media. So what did they did? They wore these colorful masks to be sure to attract attention. They gave themselves a really crazy name. And then what they would do is they would go to subway stations in Moscow because they knew the most people would be there. And they also knew that people had their phones with them. So what hype artists often do is they think of what's a mechanism that has a built-in delivery message. I hate to use the idea of viral now with everything that's going along,
Yeah.
but viruses are great at this. They inject DNA into a cell, which is self-replicating, right?
Mhm.
So they knew if they went to these busy subway stations and they had something that was, colorful to look at, it would spread. So they would, like, for example, the woman, I think, pulled a firecracker out of her underwear and it blew up and it went all over the country. Now, does that mean you need to do stuff like that? No. But there are playful ways to do that on the internet. What if you find a really heavily trafficked subreddit? And what if you come up with a really fun contrarian idea that takes on the self-satisfied authorities in your industry? Well, that's fun. That's playful. You're not hurting anybody.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that there are actual practices where you can train yourself to be calmer. So in other words, a lot of people self-sabotage themselves by simply getting all frazzled and not controlling their emotions. So, meditation, exercise, martial arts, mindfulness, this stuff isn't twinkle, twinkle, ding dong. It's a way of being in control. It's taking the reins back of your own emotions. So you can take a deep breath and say, okay, what
Sure.
result do I want to get? And how do I kind of play the chess to get there without losing my mind? And we all do that, right? We all let our emotions take control of us. So I think that's sort of the 1-2 punch. I mean, or the 3 punches. One is building the case that, there are a lot of really great people. If Martin Luther King had done what he did when the media wasn't there, it would have failed. You know what I mean? The fact that he could master media, hype made the civil rights movement happen. 2 is make people realize there's a real element of playfulness involved. It can actually enhance what you're doing. And 3 is teaching people emotional control.
Wow, that's great. So why did you write this book? Like, you could have put it out in the universe in a series of videos or blog posts or I don't know
Yeah.
what, but why did you write this book?
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons. Number one is purely because I'm a writer. I mean, as I said, I still identify that way. So
Mhm.
having a book is just important to me. I love books. I mean, my house is full of them. It's just something. It's makes me proud. It's a goal. I want my name on a book. That's the. I don't know. You could call that ego, or you could just call that purpose, but that's part of it. Number two, I still think, again, this is a hype thing. We make decisions about people based on mental shortcuts. People talk about blogs and podcasts and all of these things, and they're all really great and they all really serve a purpose. I was a podcaster, I write articles, but having a book out in the world with that McGraw-Hill logo on it, it gets you the bigger job. That people look at that and say, this guy's a real expert. He's the guy who wrote the book. It gets you the big speaking gigs, which get you the big clients. Um, yeah, I mean, I think those are the 2 reasons. And 3, I don't know. There's something about a book, a series of blog posts. You don't dig in deep in the way you do in a book. Me having to write this book, I had to really do some serious research and really think out my ideas. It's not just a series of blog posts that I tamped together that I threw off that morning. I really had to form a cogent argument. I had to read countless biographies and figure out what are the unifying principles. I had to weave them together. I had to work with editors to refine my ideas. I think I think it's the same way. I think it's still valuable to read books. You know, I don't think there was a place for blogs, but I think readers of books are better thinkers.
What have you learned about yourself in writing this book?
About myself, I've learned a whole lot about a lot of things. About myself.
Deep thoughts.
I learned that I'm when it comes to the written word. So I'm I don't think you would look at me and say, wow, that guy is really detail oriented. You know, like, I mean, I struggle with that a little bit. I've always been fortunate to rely on people who keep my life in order and keep my business in order, but I'm the big idea guy, the quintessential, that guy. But when it came to this book, it's amazing how detail oriented I was. Like, I caught things that proofreaders didn't find. I pushed back really hard. Sometimes I can be a little too easygoing, but with this, I mean, I until I got what I wanted, in regards to the layout, in regards to the editing, in regards to getting me the advanced copies so I could market it. I was really detail oriented and really, what do you call it? I guess persistent. And what does that tell me about myself? I don't know, but it tells me something, Yeah.
Well, I think you're passionate to get it out there. You followed through on it. You did your research. You had attention to detail. Maybe you're not prone to that, but you were so passionate about your arguments and what you came up with that you wanted to put some meat behind it.
I think so. Yeah.
So let's switch gears to talk a little bit about money, which you're not prepared to talk about, but that's fine.
I like money.
So, what do you think your smartest money move has been in business?
I embraced this thing a little while ago called profit first accounting. Have you ever heard of this?
Of course.
That was a big game changer for me.
So did you establish 5 accounts, or?
I did all of it. So
yeah.
I really, I was doing what so I had gone from struggling in business, as we all do in the beginning, to having a decent amount of revenue. And because it was an agency business, I would bring in people to help me with everything, and I would look at my bottom line and it wasn't good enough, so I was always I was paying myself last, like the typical thing, I supported my family, but like, I'm bringing in all this revenue. I'm giving people jobs, and like, why am I not living that well? Why am I living, worse than when I had, a job, and I didn't understand that. And I'm not a finance guy or an accounting guy. So all I knew the typical formula, right? I mean, you take the revenue, you subtract out what you're spending, and you got left over the money. That's obvious, right? And that idea of you're in business to make a profit, that's literally the reason you're in business. So you don't just guess and hope you have profit left over. You wouldn't do that even in a lemonade stand, but yet we do it every day in business, right? So this idea that like, you bring in revenue, you extract what you would expect to get in profit, and what you have left over is all the money you got to spend. That really, really changed my thinking. And I had to make some tough cuts and all of that, but my business didn't suffer. So that was interesting. And then I guess the other thing was about that, I think that Mike Michalowicz, the guy who wrote that book, Profit First, said, had a quote that I loved. He said, I won't get it right, but it was, the old definition of success is having as many employees and as much office space as possible. And the new definition of success is having as much as much profit as possible with the least amount of office space and the least number of employees, And I did. In the back of my mind, I always, not that I ever had 100-person business, but in the back of my mind, I was always like, one day I'll have my big office doors and my thing. And I'm like, why? What for?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a big one for me.
Well, I'm glad that you learned about profit first. I totally get it. I think it's a great idea. I know some people that swear by it, and some people are like, oh my God, I get the concept, but I can't manage 5 accounts. So some of them just like 1 or 2.
I have a helper. There's a woman, Amy LaLiberte, who's sort of my, I looked up when I read this book because I knew I couldn't handle it. I'm not a money guy in that way. I found a profit first professional, and she's been a
Yeah.
godsend to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Let's talk about the connection between money and marketing, because I see this as a very challenging thing for business owners where
Yeah.
they'll view marketing as an expense, not an investment, although it is on the P&L as an expense, but I want people to think of it as an investment. But I always see the relationship between money out and money in marketing. And a lot of times business owners, when they invest, they don't understand that things either take time or it may be like if you invest money in January, you'll see some in May, but you won't really see a lot until November or December. And there's that relationship between money out and money in, the lumpiness of it, the fact that once you invest that money, it's gone and you can't use it to pay your rent or your mortgage or your insurance. Right. So what do you make of this whole relationship between money and marketing and cash flow?
Yeah, I think part of it is the marketer's fault. And I'll tell you why. Because people often complain that people don't see the value of marketing and they don't treat it as an investment. But marketers say that when they're selling themselves, but they don't really do it as an investment. So in other words, this marketing has become one of these words like branding, where it's like, what does it really mean? I mean, there are literally marketing departments at big corporations that you cannot track one penny of revenue to those marketing companies. You think maybe it helped. Maybe the fancy new website helped. It's better than having a bad website, but there's no direct connection. And so to me, when people ask me what marketing is, it's literally anything, any activity that gives you a shot, that puts you up to the plate to make a sale. I mean, so like when people make a distinction between business development and marketing, I make no distinction. Sales, yeah, because sales is closing the deal. But if you have a small business and you had the idea that whenever you go to conferences and network, X% of those, network connections turn into leads, how is that not marketing? You know what I mean? So to me, it's not about being creative, although that's part of it. It's not about making nice pictures. It's not about how nice your copy sounds. If standing on a street corner with a cardboard sign brings money in a legitimate way, more than your advertising, I need more people standing on the street corner with a cardboard sign. That is marketing. And that's all about money.
When your clients come to you and they're hiring you, they'll have to pay you, and they have to do ad spend or some sort of spend on whatever you're doing, right? Is that
not for us? That we're not like that. We don't do advertising, so no. But often that's the case. Yeah.
Okay, so for you, they're paying you to get them exposure somehow and get them a sale or put them in the position to get one.
Right? Well, so yeah, but so any conversation that I have with anyone, any kind of prospect or whatever you want to call it, I always say to them this question. I say, listen, and it's a script kind of, but it works. If you and I were meeting a year from now and you said to me, Mike, I had the greatest year ever, professionally, personally, because they're connected. What does that year look like? Mm-hmm. And if they say to me something that's completely disconnected from what I do, then I take my word on this, I do not work with them because I will fail, and I can't afford failures. If they say to me, listen, and it's not always about money. So most people, it's money oriented. I know that if I get a whole bunch of speaking gigs and exposure in this niche, it always turns into sales for me. All right, let's have that conversation. So I'd love to be doing a speaking gig this amount of time every so often, and podcast interviews every so often, and turning and X amount of revenue. We should have that talk. But but once in a while, it's not about money. I mean, we had a client who was a great client, but this person made most of their money in a different business, and they sold the business for a whole lot of money. And in the second phase of their life, they were all about spreading their ideas. They were a college professor, and this was a multimillionaire, but they were a college professor. They had books, and this person didn't care about money. This person wanted as many people as possible to be exposed to their ideas. So that's valid, but I need to know that. And that's usually not the case because business is run on money. That's the fuel.
That question is the R factor question.
That's the Dan Sullivan question. I was going to mention that. I went to strategic coach, and that is
I'm
the
in
R
it,
factor
and I
question.
love it.
Yeah, I loved it. It did a lot for me.
Yeah,
Are you?
amazing.
You're in it. You're in it now.
I am. In fact, I
How-
guested on a class today. I was in it for about half, but he's so good and he's brilliant.
It's great. It helped me a lot. Who is your coach?
Gina Pellegrini is the one that I coach with the most. She's great.
I've heard the name. I had Mary Miller, who I thought was really good.
Don't know her.
I was going to actually get around to giving attribution because, because they did come up with that. But yeah, it's a great question, and I used the DOS letter too. I mean, the whole dangers, opportunities. Those are valid. Those are really important questions.
Yeah. Well, it's been great to have you on and to learn about you. And let's tell everyone where they need to go to get more information about you and your book as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, for the book, obviously, it's always nice if you can get one from a bookstore, although I don't know if those are happening these days, right? But yeah, I mean, go on Amazon, go on Barnes and Noble. It's The Hype Handbook by Michael F. Schein, spelled the Jewish way, Schein. And, to find out about me, the company is Microfame Media, so MICROFAME.com. And you can learn all about the company there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was great to have you.
It was a pleasure to be here, Justin.
Have a question? Want to get in touch with us? Need some help and advice with your finances? Just go to coolmoneyshow.com and reach out to us. That's coolmoneyshow.com.
Krane Financial Solutions is an SEC-registered investment advisor. However, such registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training, and no inference to the contrary should be made. A copy of our current written disclosure statement discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request. Information contained herein is for informational and illustrative purposes only and general in nature. It should not be considered specific financial planning or investment advice, or a recommendation to buy or sell any type of securities or other investment products. No investment decision should be made based solely on any information provided herein. We do not provide legal, accounting, or tax services. We recommend that all investors seek out the services of competent professionals in any of the aforementioned areas. Certain information provided has been obtained from third-party sources that we believe reliable. However, it's not been independently verified and is not guaranteed.